Hello everyone, myself is Dr. Avinash Ammangi. I am from Gurudev Academy. I am your biology mentor. Today we are going to discuss with respect to the Karnataka Common Entrance Test related with respect to that one topic what we have considered, that is reproductive health, and synopsis part of it is, which is actually going to help you during the preparation, short way of preparation for this particularly KCET, right? So based on that, if you consider like what exactly this reproductive health, and according to the what the particularly what WHO, how our physical health as well as mental health is important, like that only the particularly reproductive health is even important. Here we are going to consider the two actually major things, which is nothing but what maternal development and even with respect to the what the particularly child care too, right? So with respect to that, if you consider what this particularly World Health Organization WHO defines, that is reproductive health is a total well-being in all aspects of what reproduction. It is reproductive health is a total well-being in all aspects of what reproduction. Here what matters, the particularly physical, emotional, behavioral as well as what social, right? So here with respect to the what even the reproduction aspects, if we consider, when we are going to understand how much important this particularly reproductive health is, with respect to that, what even we have to understand the physical of the particularly physical changes with respect to our body, when we are going to have a something called as what secondary characters, and emotional, behavioral as well as what the particularly social aspects of this particularly reproductive health. So headquarter of this particularly WHO, which is situated in what Geneva, which is in Switzerland, right? So this is what even what we have to remember, because in some of the NEET level, if you consider, or in CET also, they have asked this question called as what headquarter of WHO is where? It is in Geneva, which is in Switzerland, right? So with respect to that, we'll go ahead how actually this particularly reproductive health is important and what are the aspects of this particularly what reproductive health. So what we are going to study here, the reproductive health, its problems and even what the strategies, right? So first we'll like what try to understand what kind of a problems we are going to have, or what type of myths we are going to come across, and for that we will plan for what these strategies even, right? So India initiated what the reproductive health program, that is mainly what we are going to call it as family planning, in 1951, right? So you should remember this particularly what a date, that is what 1951 family planning program India initiated, right? Then wider reproductions, that is what related areas are in operation under the particularly what remaining other aspects of what this particularly reproduction related, which will come under with respect to the what reproductive and the child health care, that is what we are going to call it as RCH or RCH program, right? So this is what the important aspect what we are going to find out. Now this particularly what the reproductive health and its strategy or problems, that what we are going to discuss here, the particularly such programs deal with the following aspects, right? Mainly like RCH, if you consider, that is reproductive health and even what child health care, right? So with respect to the RCH, what is actually important aspects they have included, right? So here that is giving awareness about the what reproduction related aspects, for what creating something called as what reproductively healthy society, right? So they are government or even like what NGOs plays very important role with respect to this, right? They are going to give us a information with respect to the what reproduction related, to so that we can create a reproductively healthy society. Then you are going to find out what educate the people about what birth control or the family planning program, right? So there what it actually counts. Then you consider what care of a pregnant mother, this is what the most important aspects, right? So, socially if you find out like what the our old people if you consider, or today's youngsters you consider, so we should understand the pregnancy and even the importance of this particularly pregnant mother, right? So that we can give them a proper care, right? Even the postnatal care is what important of what mother as well as what the child after delivering, mother even to be taken care of and even the particularly child. because as we know that when there is a development of something called as what fetus inside a body, during that period lots of hormones are going to get secreted. Once the mother is going to deliver the baby, that time what is going to happen, the hormones goes down, and when hormone goes down, mainly like what, there will be a lots of mood swings, or there will be like what related with respect to the what mental health aspects. That is what even what we have to consider, right? So there we have to take care of not only with respect to the child, but even we have to take care of what mother, right? Then we should understand what this importance of what breastfeeding, right? So breastfeeding is even equally what important, as this particularly developing child which came into the what new environmental condition. For that what is required, the breastfeeding is required, because from the breastfeeding or from the breast milk only, it is going to get something called as what antibody, so that it can immunologically fight against the particularly harassed environmental condition, right? Then equal opportunities for the what male and female child, right? So here we should not make any differences between like what male as well as what female, right? Female child majorly, right? So we should avoid actually even female feticide too, right? So again what is important, awarenesses of what problems due to population explosion, social evils like what the sex abuse and even sex related crimes, right? So even we have to bring up the particularly like what the population explosion means, how population is growing and what is the reason for it is, and how we can control this particularly population, right? Then even you can consider like what the particularly social evils, like some of the myths even to be what spreaded with respect to the what reproductive or health, or even with related with respect to the what sex aspect if you consider. Then evils like what sex abuse, right? And even what sex related crimes. So these are the what important aspects is actually considered over with respect to the what RCH, right? That is what we call it as reproductive and child health care, right? So again what is important here, if you consider what reproductive health, if you consider with respect to that what is needed, aims and need for what sex education in the particularly schools. So with respect to our age, if you consider mainly what we are going to call it as a teenage, right? That is what a 12 or 13 to 19 what we consider majorly. That's what the teenage. During that period, both with respect to the male as well as female, there will be a lots of hormonal changes, and we should understand this. How we are going to understand, and this majorly what you are going to find out, the changes which is actually brought up inside our body, that may can take us into the what the myths or myths related what even related with respect to the what sex, right? So that everything to be what understood, how we are going to understand, by means of what understanding it in education manner, right? That is what to provide a right information about the what sex related aspects, right? Then it helps to avoid what the sex related myths and even the misconceptions, right? Again, to give a proper information about what reproductive organs, adolescence means majorly what we are going to call it as the teenage, right? During which the lots of hormonal regulations what we are going to get, we'll have a secondary character development, right? So there the particularly awareness is to be what provided. Then and related what changes, right? What kind of a changes, bodily changes, what we are going to get it with respect to the male as well as what the female, right? Then again what is important is a safe and hygienic sexual practices, right? Then even understanding what the particularly sexually transmitted diseases, that is STD, or example what they have given is AIDS, right? Because these diseases are not curable, right? So for that purpose, first we have to understand how much important these all aspects are. When we get a proper type of knowledge regarding this, then definitely like what we won't carry out something called as what such kind of mistakes. So one by one we will discuss here with respect to that. Majorly first we will go ahead with respect to the what population explosion and the particularly what a birth control, right? So this is what the most important aspects if you consider. Now if you consider population explosion and birth control in 19 majorly what 1900, right? So what has happened with respect to the 1900 is the world population was around what? 2 billion. World population was around what? 2 billion. By 2000, it rocketed to about what? 6 billion. Right. In 1900, it was what? 2 billion. But in only in 100 years, what has happened? The particularly 600 billion population is got increased. Right. So that is what we are going to call it as explosion of what population, or over explosion of what population. Right. Then majorly in India, if you consider with respect to the India, we'll count down. Right. So population was nearly what? 350 million at the particularly what? Independence period. Right. Then it reached around what? 1 billion by 2000. Right. In with respect to the independence, our population was around what? 350 billion. Right. But after like what? 2000, when we reached, during that period it was 1 billion. Right. And crossed the what? 1.2 billion in May 2011. It crossed 1.2 billion in May 2011. It means every sixth person in the world is what? An Indian. Right. If you make what? 6% to what? Standard. Right. 100% sixth one will be the what? The Indian. That much of what? The particularly population is got increased with respect to the what? India during what? 2000 consider, or 2011. Right. At present, I feel like we have actually crossed the even even like what? China population. China was the most populated country in the world. Right. And second was the India. But at present, maybe we crossed that event too. Right. So this type of what knowledge is what most important one. Right. So according to the particularly what? 2011 census. Right. 2011 census report, our population growth rate was less than 2%. Right. That is 20 by what? 100 per year, what we are going to find out with respect to the what? Increase. Right. At a rate. Right. And which our population could be what? Increases rapidly. Right. So according to this particular 11 census, if you consider 2%, the population was went on what? Increasing, and even like what? Rapidly it started what? Increasing. That what? The most important one. Right. So even what here matters? The reasons for the population explosion. What was the actual reason for this particularly population explosion? One is what happened? Increased health facilities and better what? Living conditions. Right. Now health aspects related, if you consider, even India is started improving with respect to the what? Medical. Right. Now when it is increasing, health facilities are increasing, then people who are about to die, or whoever what with some diseased conditions, they will go have and carry out something treatment, and they still survive. Right. So based on that only what happened? The population went on what? Increasing even. Increasing means what? The death rate got decreased. Right. So here the rapid decline in what happened? The majorly death rate. Even the maternal mortality, that is what we are going to call it as MMR, maternal mortality rate, that even got decreased. Right. Infant mortality rate, that even got what? Decreased. Right. Then increase in what? Number of what? People in what? Reproducible age. Right. Now we at present we consider India as the what? The youngest country. Why? Because 60% of the population in India, around approximately what? 60% you can consider youths are there. Right. So youths means they are at the what? The reproducible age. Then definitely they will go forward the reproduction. Right. So based on that only what happened? Increase in the what? Population started taking place. Right. Then you consider what? Impact of population explosion. Now what is actually impact what we are going to face on? One is what? Scarcity of what? Basic requirement, majorly with respect to the food consider, shelter you consider, and clothing you consider. Now we started what? Acquiring the land. Right. Now everyone at present wanted to construct their own houses. Right. So everyone has their own dreams. Right. So based on that only what started happening is, with respect to the what? Shelter aspects, we are facing more and more difficulties to survive into this particularly small geographical areas as population got increased. Again, population increased means what? Food availability even to be what increased. But what is happening with respect to the population increase? We are not worried about this particularly food aspects, right? So these all are going to be what? Scarcity, food, shelter, even what? The clothing, right? So if the population went on increasing. Now control measures, the particularly what government initiated. What this RCH is? RCH is to what? It went on providing something called as what? Information regarding reproductive health by means of audio video communication, or by means of what? A different advertisement, television advertisement, majorly what related to the what? Sex aspects, or majorly related with respect to the what? Reproduction aspects, right? All these steps are what? The important one. Here NGOs has even played a very important role, right? So they started promoting different kind of what? Aspects, majorly like what? Government motivates what? Smaller families by using what? Contraceptive methods, right? Now government even started what? Motivating this particularly smaller families, right? Why smaller families are important? Like what? We can provide a proper education to that particularly child, we can nurture that particularly child very well, right? Then aware the people about what? Slogan what government has framed, that is what? Hum do hamare do, right? We too, our too, right? Then again many couples have adopted a one child norms, right? If you consider like what? If you go and visit a metro cities, they know the conditions, how difficult it is being, and both the particularly like what? Couples are into the what? Jobs to survive into that particularly conditions. So for that purpose they started adopting something called as what? One child norm, right? So this is what even what important to understand. And even government started giving particularly incentives to the what? Smaller group of what? Families, right? So they started motivating a small families, so that the population can be what? Controlled, right? Then statutory rising of what? The marriageable age of the particularly female, that they made it what? 18 years, and the male they made it what? 21 years. So government itself has what? Given a particularly marriageable age, that is what? For the female it is 18 years, and for the male it is what? 21 years, right? Right now if you even consider like they started even thinking of what? Rising this particularly what? Still the marriageable age, the girls they made they are about to make like what? 21 years, and for the boys is what? 23 years, right? So that what even matters here, right? Here we are going to discuss regarding something called as what? This control, or population control, or birth control, how we can control this particularly what? The particularly birth of a particular child. Majorly one or two members into the what? Family is what? Enough right now if you consider, right? So properties of an particularly what? Ideal contraceptives, how we are going to like what? This control this particularly by means of using something called as what? Birth control measures. So for that purpose what is important here? The whatever the contraceptives we are going to use, right, that should have something called as what? Ideal properties, right? So those properties what we are going to discuss. Whatever the contraceptives are used, one is it should be user friendly, right? Even easily available, effective, irreversible, right? Even what? No or least side effects you can consider, right? Then should not interfere with respect to the what? Sexual drive or desire or sexual act, right? So these are the what? Something called as what? Ideal property the particularly contraceptive should have, right? When it has these all stuffs, then definitely that contraceptive is going to help up with respect to the what? The birth control measures, right? So this property what we have discussed. Now one by one we will discuss majorly what type of what? Contraceptive methods these are, right? So there are what? Different methods or different sources available, and one by one we will discuss what the which is actually included in this particular chapter. The first one is, that is natural or traditional method, what we are going to call it as, right? Then there is something called as what? Barrier method, where we are not going to let this meeting of sperm and the particularly egg, so there will not be any what? Fertilization. In between there will be a barrier. So if there is no any meeting of this particularly sperm as well as what? Egg, then definitely there will not be any fertilization. So that's what we are going to call it as barrier. Then intrauterine devices, right? Majorly these intrauterine devices is used by means of what? Whom? Female, right? So that to be what? Inserted with respect to the vagina of the particularly female. That what you should remember. Again, oral contraceptives. If you consider oral contraceptives, the female itself should go for what? Taking up this particularly oral contraceptives, right? So why only female? Because the lots of hormonal regulations is going to be carried with respect to the female, and female itself is going to bear the child, right? So for that purpose only, like what, these all things to be what used by means of what? The female. Then there is something called as what? Injectable, majorly like what we are going to call it injections, right? Then there is one method called as what? Surgical method, or even we are going to call it as what? Sterilization method. So one by one we'll discuss and how this can be used and what is actually the properties of this particularly different barriers even, right? So that what we are going to discuss here, right? Then here if you consider contraceptive methods, inside that first one what we have told is that is natural or even what we are going to call it as traditional method. Why traditional method? Because before the people used to follow this itself, right? So inside that what it is, avoiding the chances of what? Ovum and the sperm meeting. What contraceptive? Contraceptive means what? Contraceptive is nothing but what we are going to do is we are avoiding the meeting of this particularly sperm or the particularly egg, right? So in that time what? There will not be any fertilization, right? So obviously we are into the what? The birth control measures, right? So that what we are going to discuss here. So types of what? A traditional method, the here that is nothing but what? Periodic absentia, then coitus interrupts, then lactational amenorrhea, right? So these are known to be the particularly what? The what we are going to call it as the natural methods. One is periodic absentia, coitus interrupts, and even lactational amenorrhea, right? So these are the what? Contraceptive methods, right? So we should understand before following this all steps, what we should understand here matter is of what? The menstrual cycle, right? So you should understand actually what this menstrual cycle is, and which one is actually known to be the fertile period, or on which days there will be a fertile period or a releasing of ovum or ovulation is going to take place. That everything can be what? Counted. So we should look for the what? Calendar like event with respect to the what? This particularly menstrual cycle. So there we can use this particularly what? Natural or traditional methods, right? So inside that first one is what? The periodic absentia, second one is coitus interrupts, and third one is what? The lactational amenorrhea. So we'll see how the particularly what exactly these are, right? Here what it means, the periodic absentia, right? What it is, avoid the coitus from 10 to what? 17 days of what? Menstrual cycle, right? Majorly if you consider after the like what, if I say it like what? Related with respect to the menstrual cycle, right? So first 5 days begins with respect to the what? Mens, right? Mens means the particularly bleeding, right? Now later period what will happen? There will be a development of this particularly what? Oocytes, right? So oocytes development what we are going to see, right? So that oo is going to be developed into the what? Ovum or what we are going to call it as egg during this particularly what? 10 to 17 days, right? Majorly at what? 14th day of the particularly after this particularly what? Menses or with respect to the what? Menstrual cycle, there will be an ovulation, right? This time can differ with respect to a particular individual, right? So don't consider it as what? 14th means what? 14 date only, right? So it is going to be vary with respect to the what? Individual, but we should have a particularly what? Count on it, right? Then you consider what? 10 to 17th. From 10th the day of what? Menstrual cycle to what? 17th day of menstrual cycle, there will be an ovulation. Ovulation means what? Releasing of this particularly ovum from the what? Ovary, it is going to come up into the what? The particularly majorly finger like projections of this particular female reproductive structure, fimbrae to the what? Broad broad structure known to be ampulla to the narrower isthmus junction. So there it is going to move, ovum or egg is going to move, and there if consider like what sperm comes and meet and fertilization occurs, then definitely there will be a pregnancy, right? So during that particularly ovulation or fertile period should be what avoided, means during these days there should not be any what a coitus to be performed by any couple, right? So that there will not be any the particularly what the what we call the development of this particularly new offspring or fertilization procedure, right? Then coitus interrupts or withdrawal, right? What it is, withdraw a penis from this particularly vagina just before what ejaculation to avoid what insemination. During this particularly coitus procedure, the male is going to feel the particularly what this particularly insemination, right? Because he is about to be what relaxed. During that period, what he have to do is he should not ejaculate the particularly sperm inside the female vagina. So before the ejaculation only he should remove the penis, so that there will not be any kind of what fertilization, right? So mainly that itself what we are going to call it as to avoid insemination, right? So that is what we call it as coitus interrupt. Then there is something called as what lactational amenorrhea, right? It is the absence of the particularly what menstrual cycle, right, and ovulation due to the what intense lactation after the parturition, or even like what fully breastfeeding increases what lactation. This method helps to what prevent the conception, and this is effective up to the what 6 months following the particularly what parturition. It has what no side effects, but chances of what failure are what high, right? So if you consider lactation amenorrhea means when mother or a particularly female has delivered a baby, right, after the delivery of the baby or after the parturition up to the 6 months there will not be any menstrual cycle. Now when there will not be, this can even get vary. Some people can have the particularly menstrual cycle with respect to the 3 months only, but it depends upon that particularly what the individual health aspects, right? So now with respect to the lactational amenorrhea, or when mother is feeding the baby, during that period there will not be any what menstrual cycle. When there will not be any menstrual cycle, if the coitus is performed, then there will not be any kind of what fertilization. But whatever these natural methods are, these natural method, they don't have any side effects because it's a natural one. Then again if you consider, but here the chances of what failure is very high, right? So we never know like what we cannot have a proper count or exact count of what all these stuffs. So there little bit what this natural traditional method can have a what the failure aspects, right? So that is what the important, but what we have to understand with respect to this particularly natural method. Next we are going to discuss with respect to the what the barrier method, right? Now most commonly at present during what the when you watch the televisions, there also you are going to come across with respect to this advertisement of what the majorly what we are going to call it as condoms, right? So these condoms are the barriers of what meeting of the sperm and egg, right? So now what it is actually, they prevents physical meeting of what sperm and ovum, right? So here they mentioned it as one is condom, then diaphragm, cervical caps and vault, right? Then consider like we are going to see what exactly this particular condom is and what is it is made up of and how it is going to help up to avoid the mating of this particularly sperm with respect to the ovum. If you consider condom, it is made up of what rubber or latex sheath, right? Then condoms for male is available, and even condoms for what female is even available, right? Condoms for male is what cover the what penis, right? Then cover the what particularly if you consider female, it is going to cover the vagina and even what cervix, right? So condoms are used just before the what coitus with respect to the what the sexual urge. During that period itself only what we are going to do, we are going to wear this condom, and then only what the coitus is what performed by means of this particularly couples, right? After wearing, what will happen? It is going to be like a barrier. It won't allow the meeting of this particular sperm and ovum, right? So they actually prevents the what entry of the semen into the what female reproductive tract. Now what condoms are going to do? It will actually avoids this particularly entry of what semen into the where the female vagina or female reproductive part, right? So popularly condom even can be called as what Nirodh, right? Nirodh is popularly popular condoms for the particularly what male, right? Nirodh is known to be the popular condom for what the particularly male. So these are the what structure you can consider. This is a male and this is a female condom, right? So that what you are going to see, right? Then with respect to the what, if you consider even condom, if you consider why condoms are very popular, right? This is what we should understand, why they are popular or how much they are going to be effective, right? Majorly if you find out, it protects the user from what STDs and even AIDS, right? Majorly STD and the particularly what AIDS can be avoided by means of what, using this particularly method, like what the condoms can be used, right? It is what a disposable, it can degrade even easily, right? It can be disposable or reusable even, right? So it can be self inserted and they thereby give the particularly what privacy to the user. What it can do, it is self inserted, there is no any requirement of any medicinal professionals, medical professionals to insert that, right? So it provides actually privacy to whom, the particularly what users, right? So that what you are going to find out, right? Then there is like leaving this particular condom, there are some other barrier methods are there, that is diaphragms, cervical caps and vault, right? Diaphragms, cervical caps and vault, right? Consider like it is even what made up of rubber and are inserted into the what female reproductive tract to cover the cervix during the particularly what coitus, right? So it is even going to cover up this particularly the cervix as well, cervix majorly during what coitus, right? Then they block the particularly entry of sperm through the what cervix. So it actually blocks the entry of this particularly sperm. They are what reusable. They are what reusable. Before itself what I have told you, right? They are actually reusable. Then spermicidal creams what they are going to use. Now what, even to have a effective activity of this particularly barrier, what they are going to do is with respect to these diaphragm and cervical caps or vault, they are even going to use something called as what spermicidal creams. So, right? So or jellies even you can consider, or even foams even you can consider, right? Are used along with respect to the what, the particularly barrier to increase their contraceptive efficiency, right? So there they are going to use this particularly what gels what they have given here, right? So that can be used so that there will not be any mating of this particularly sperm with respect to the ovum, or there will be a total blockage of what, the entry of sperm into the what, the vagina of a what female, right? So that's what we majorly consider it as the barrier method, right? So two methods we have discussed right now. One is natural method or a traditional method even we are going to call it as. Then we came across with respect to the barrier method. Now let's begin with respect to the what, intrauterine devices, or even what we are going to call it as IUDs, right? Now what this IUDs, right? Majorly you consider this intrauterine device is inserted into the what female vaginal tract or uterine cavity. So there they are going to what, insert into the what, the majorly uterus, right? And this is to be performed by means of what, medicinal practitioners, right? So they are itself is going to insert this particularly, right? So these are inserted by whom, the particular doctor or nurses, they are professionals, right? Then in the particularly what uterus through the what vagina, in the uterus through what vagina they are going to insert. They increases what, phagocytosis of sperm. Here we should understand the function of this is a This is what the most important one what we have to understand. Now whatever these intrauterine devices, what they are going to do, they are actually carries phagocytosis of what? Sperm, right, which goes and kills this particularly what? Sperm, by means of producing what? Different components, right. So IUDs are what? Ideal method to delay the what? Pregnancy or space between the particularly what? Children. Most preferred barrier method, most preferred something called as what? Contraceptive in India is IUDs, right. So that what you should remember. So to have a gap between even what? Children's, the couples are going to use this particularly what? IUDs. Then there is what? Types of IUDs, right. One is what? Non-medicated IUDs, right. Then copper releasing IUDs and hormone releasing IUDs. So based on the function of them, they are divided into what? Different aspects, like different non-medicated IUDs, then copper releasing IUDs and hormone releasing IUDs, right. Then first we are going to discuss with respect to the what? Non-mediated IUDs. So this even can be asked, which one is the non-mediated IUDs? Give an example. Example for this is what? Leaps loop or Leapers loop, what we are going to call it as. They retard what? The sperm motility, right. The moment of this particularly what? Sperm. Consider if this is sperm, right, whose motility or moment, if you consider, that itself is to be what? Retarded by means of this particularly Leaps loop, right. Then also have what? Spermicidal effect. Also have spermicidal effect means it is even going to kill this particularly what? Sperm, right. So that is what we are going to call it as non-medicated IUDs, right. Or example for this non-medicated IUDs is Leapers loop, right, or Leaps loop, what we are going to call it as. Then there is like what? The second one what we have came across, the copper releasing IUDs. Which one? Copper releasing IUDs. Majorly what it is going to do, it is going to produce copper ions which actually suppresses what? Motility. Again the sperm motility can be suppressed by means of copper, or fertilizing this particularly capacity of sperm, right. So fertilizing capacity of sperm even is to be what? Suppressed, so that it won't go and fertile this particularly what? Ovum. So example for this particularly copper releasing IUDs is the CUT, right. CUT means copper T, what we are going to call it as. Then copper 7 you consider, then multi-load 375, this is what we are going to see. This is multi-load 375, this is copper 7 and this is copper T. Based on the what? Structure only, they have given the particularly what? Even name. What these IUDs are going to do, these are going to release something called as what? Copper ion. This copper ion is going to suppress the motility of sperm, and even the capacity of what? Fertilizing the sperm is even going to be the what? Decrease, right. So that what you are going to find out. Then hormone releasing IUDs, right. So hormone releasing IUDs, if you consider, they make something called as what? The uterus unsuitable for implantation, right. Consider if there is a fertilization still, but what? We don't want this particularly child, then during that period this can be even what? Used, right. What it is going to do, it is going to make the uterus unsuitable for what? Implantation. When zygote is formed, zygote to the what? Embryo formed, embryo when it get attached to the what? The particularly endometrium wall, then only what we are going to call it as implantation occurred, right. Now to avoid that, it is going to avoid this particularly what? Implantation. Who? The particularly hormone releasing IUDs, right. So even what it makes the cervix hostile to the what? The particularly sperm, right. The cervix itself is going to be what? Hostile, right. So when it is hostile, the sperm will not have a particularly what? Path, right. So that what we are going to see, right. So this is what the diagram what we are going to find out. Mainly examples what they have given, progester and even LNG20, right. So that what you should remember the examples of this, right. Then there is something called as what? Oral contraceptives. Oral contraceptives means majorly like what? Pills, right. Consider by chance if the mother is being the female being what, the pregnant, so still they don't want that particularly what child, by mistakenly it occurred, so for them the oral contraceptives can be what used, so that they can avoid unwanted pregnancies. We'll see what exactly these are. Oral administration of what, progestogen or progestogen and estrogen, right, combination in the form of what, the particularly tablets, progestogen or progestogen estrogen combination, that what we are going to find out with respect to the what, in the form of what, the tablets, or in the form of what, pills, that what we are going to see. So majorly if you consider, these pills are taken daily for what, 21 days. Some of the, like, it depends on which type of what the pill you are using, right. So some of the tablets you can take up to the what, 21 days. We even can call it as what, unwanted 21 days tablet, right. Then starting with respect to the what, within the first 5 days of what, menstrual cycle. If you don't want to what, conceive, and before the conceive only, even you can take a tablet, right. Like after the completion of what, 5 days of what, menstrual cycle, go on taking the tablet up to what, the 21 days. After the particularly what, gap of 7 days, again the menstrual period will start, and it should be repeated in the what, same pattern till the what, female desire to prevent the conception, right. Now what happened, up to 5 days left, started taking tablets, 21 days the tablet has taken, then after that again she will have a menstrual cycle, there will be a gap, again you can take the tablet up to the what, 21 days, so we can avoid totally what, the particularly pregnancy, right. So what these particular pills are going to do, they inhibits the ovulation and even what, implantation, and the thicken the what, cervical mucus to prevent the entry of this particularly what, sperm. What it is going to do, it actually inhibits ovulation, again it inhibits what, implantation and cervical mucus, by it thickens the cervical mucus, so that which prevents the entry of what, sperm, right. Then pills are what, very effective with a lesser side effects. These pills are what, very effective, which has what, lesser kind of what, side effects, right. So we'll see the different pills, and majorly what, one example government has given, that is what, the Saheli, right. Government based what example is, why government based I am saying it as, because the government itself has framed this particularly Saheli as a contraceptive. So new oral contraceptive for the what, female, it is Saheli, right. It is developed by whom, the Central Drug Research Institute, which is in what, Lucknow, CDRI in Lucknow, they famed this particularly what, Saheli, right. So it contains what, non-steroidal preparation, right. How it is prepared, it prepared without the particularly what, steroid. Now what it is, how it to be what taken, it is actually taken once in a week with a very few side effects and high contraceptive values, right. So this pill has what, to be taken every like what, we once in a week only, what we have to take one tablet, right. So it even has what, majorly like what, few side effects and high contraceptive value it is, right. That is what you are going to find out, Saheli, right. Then there is something called as what, you should remember from where actually this Saheli is framed. Saheli is produced by, who produced, this Central Drug Research Institute, CDR, Lucknow, right. Then there is something called as what, injectables, right. Injectables means by means of what, injections, right. So that what you are going to find out, either injection or even implants, what we are going to find out, which is actually inserted with respect to the what, skin. This is, you can find out here, they are going to what, insert up to when it is inserted, up to the couple don't want to what, conceive, right. So up to that they are going to what, insert this. Now what this is, progestogen or progestogen estrogen, right. Combinations are used by this particularly females, are injections or the particularly implant under the skins, that what we are going to find out. Their mode of action is like that of what, pills, how the pills what we have studied right before, that same type of what function is actually this implant or injections are going to carry out, right. Then and there the effective periods are much longer. If you consider like what majorly progesterone, which is actually secreted naturally, progestogen, which is actually synthesized one, right? So that is what you can find out with respect to this particular aspect. You should understand that particularly, right? Here if you find out majorly the progestrogens or progesterone estrogen combinations and even what IUDs are used emergency contraceptives. They are what? Emergency contraceptives within 72 hours of what? Coitus. Within 72 hours of what? Coitus. During that period only, like what? It can be what? Implanted. It avoids what? Majorly what? Pregnancy due to the what? Rape or casual intercourse. Right. So what we should remember here? Progestogen or progestogen estrogen combinations and IUDs are used as emergency contraceptives within what? 72 hours of what? Coitus, right? Okay, so what we know is progestogen or progestogen estrogen combination IDs are used as emergency contraceptives, right, with 72 hours of what? Coitus, right? It actually avoids what? Pregnancy due to the what? Rapes or casual intercourse. That what we should understand here. Then there is what? Some kind of something called as what? Surgical method. That surgical method we are going to discuss into the what? Next video. So at present, like what? This much only you people can recall and understand this particular chapter, which even carries what? The particularly marks. So thank you so much.